So, Richard, the last time we spoke to you, it was at Riverside Studios, and we did two things there, and we had the Day of the Daleks DVD had just come out, and we did the launch. So, what have you been up to since then? That's probably about 2 years ago.
I was just going to say, which year was it?
2 years ago.
The answer is, first bit of the answer, I genuinely had to ask you which year it was, because so much has happened in that time, and I shall probably forget the most important things. Basically, my basic job has been understudying the part of Arthur Kipps in The Two-Hander, The Woman in Black. Now that takes up a lot of time, so that's a big, basic occupation. But I've also, through the good offices of Phantom Films, written and published a book.
Right.
It's a novella, and it's based on The Killing Stone, which I recorded some years ago as a double CD.
Bill Baggs, wasn't it? Yeah.
With Bill Baggs.
Yeah.
But the sound recording that I did with Bill was very, very much shorter even than the original document. And the book Operation Hate, which it has now become, is it's not a different animal, but it's got a huge amount more than the CD, and actually it's going very well.
Yeah, and you're still writing that at the moment. Or
No,
is it
published.
out? It's out. Yeah.
Yeah, it's published. It's published as Operation Hate. I think the actual marketing has, should we say, not been aggressive, and I think if it had been, we'd have sold a good deal more copies. But it's in paperback now.
Yeah.
And we are, wherever I go, I run out of books.
Well, that's good news, isn't it?
It
I
is.
think the great thing, it must be working with a company like Phantom Films, a relatively small print, is it enables you to write and print what you want to do, rather than something that's going to be, an enormous big seller, isn't it? The times have changed, because you can actually have those smaller run books now, which in years gone by wasn't really practical.
Yes, that's perfectly true. That's perfectly true. But I think the principle is the same. The standards have to be the same.
Yeah, the quality indeed.
The quality's got to be the same. And in fact, in Operation Hate, I did make an effort not to make it a sort of a cheap novelette.
Yeah.
Which are very popular, absolutely fine. But what I tried to do was to increase the vocabulary a little bit, to get some style into the writing, and also to put through some philosophic ideas, and introduce some pictures of the world and the people in it.
Yeah.
So that it's there's a bit more for people to think about. It's not just the story of Captain Mike Yates and his friends. It is the story of Captain Mike Yates and his friends, even though for security reasons, MI6, all the names have
They've
been
vetted
changed.
it, have they? They've vetted the book.
They had to vet it, yes.
Yes,
I mean,
of
it's top secret. Top secret. But actually, I mean, when I say that I wrote the book seriously, I know, of course, it's intended as John Nathan Turner, when he once read one of the drafts, he said, this is a ripping good yarn. It is obviously intended for the Doctor Who world. I suppose you could say it's pitched at sort of mid-late teens.
Yeah.
But it's for everybody. I mean, a lot of Captain Yates's friends are now in their 40s.
Yes. Yes.
And I hope that they will. I think they will enjoy it too. I know they enjoy it because I've spoken to some of them. But also, I mean, I live in a quite it's a sort of intellectual surroundings in Charterhouse. There are a lot of very bright people here, writers, publishers, actors, all sorts of people live here. I've got flats here, and they have a reading group.
Yeah.
And they have ordered a good number of copies. And it is going to be the subject of one of their evening's readings.
So you'll be the star attraction.
But I shall be the in the pillory on that night. Yes, I wouldn't say star attraction, but I certainly would. I would be alert to the fact that people might not like it,
Mm.
or they might like it very much.
So they're not the sort of people who are going to say they like it just because you're sitting there.
Oh no!
So you're
No, not at all. No.
Oh, but that's good though.
No,
isn't
that's
it? You
very
want
good.
honesty, yeah.
Very good for me as a writer.
Yeah,
Yes.
excellent.
So I've been doing quite a lot of writing.
Mm-hmm.
I've contributed articles and poems to various magazines, including we have a very sort of top-flight circulation magazine actually for the Charterhouse, which goes quite widely. And I have literary plans.
Yeah.
And I'm going back to understudying at the Woman in Black.
Yeah.
And while I sit in my dressing room, I'm going to be busy. I'm going to be very busy. So I just hope that the person I understudy
You hope they're really good.
100%. I want him to be
100%
100% fit. I mean, I always love going on, but I've got other things to do.
So it could be very inconvenient if you
It'd be
actually have to go on and do the play.
Yeah, most inconvenient if I have to actually work. But I mean, I've played the part in my own right.
Yeah.
And it's a wonderful part.
Mm.
I wish I were playing it in the West End this time round, but I think the management found me extremely useful as an understudy.
Yeah. Well.
Because they know that people won't ask for the money back if I have to go on.
Yeah, well, yes, indeed. I mean, and we're sitting here now in your apartment in Charterhouse, which is it's just like another world, isn't it? In central London, you walk off the busy streets of the city and it's almost just like tranquil inside.
Absolutely. The Charterhouse, I shouldn't have put that Danish pastry you gave me into my mouth. Because if this answer sounds a bit muffled, that's the reason. Yes, the Charterhouse is quite unique. It's been going as a foundation for educational and support foundation since 1611.
Mm.
But the actual history of the place goes back to 1347 and the Black Death.
Yes.
When it was bought by one of the friends of Edward III and a man called Sir Walter Manny, and he bought a 13-acre site. So what we have now in 2013, nearly 2014, my goodness, is behind a high wall in Charterhouse Square, 13 acres of gardens and Jacobean and Elizabethan buildings, which is quite remarkable. And then it goes right through to Clerkenwell Road.
Yeah, it's lovely, isn't it?
It's very, very nice indeed.
But I think London's a great city, and there are lots of places like that, aren't there? You know, and the parks and so on.
I absolutely love London. It's the most fantastic city. I mean, yesterday, for the first time, I had to go to Canary Wharf. First of all, I went to Tower Bridge on the Underground, and I come out, I see the Tower of London, 1066. I then get on the DLR, an absolutely futuristic train. You feel like Batman flying through at roof level. And when I got to Canary Wharf, I was absolutely astounded. I mean, of course, they're the top quality of multi-storey buildings.
Yes.
But I had to go and see one of the business managers in Barclays Bank because I'm starting a new political party.
All right.
30-50.
Yes, which you'll tell us about, I'm sure.
I'm sure I will. It links the idealism of the under-30s with the realism of the over-50s. And its sort of principal battle cry is that we need 10% independent MPs in Parliament.
Yes.
Because at the moment we are not hearing all sides.
I was going to ask you about that, because when you lived in... I was going to ask you if you missed the South Coast and you miss Hove. But when you were down in Sussex, you did actually stand us for the Hove, didn't you?
Yeah, I stood twice in Hove. I stood once, and because I'm not 100% in favour of them now, and I wasn't 100% in favour of them then, I stood for UKIP. I know Nigel Farage. I think he's an amazing guy. Great energy, great honesty.
He's very upfront for a politician.
Very upfront, a very great clarity, and he sees very clearly the faults of Europe. Since his great triumph, I feel the party has been a bit triumphalist, and I'm not so happy about that. And also, whatever they may say, they are not a broad spectrum party, really and
Do
truly.
you think they're to the right?
Well, they're to the right, which I'm not. I mean, I'm across party, absolutely across party, but they are definitely towards the right. And also, immigration and get out of Europe. And I don't particularly like their slant on those things, but that's what they're about. And then I also stood for my own party, which was called a silent majority party. My views, my theories, have of course developed a lot over the years, but they have not changed in the fundamental cause, which is radical reform of democracy and the welfare state, on which I stood as an independent in 1973 in Twickenham.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I did very well. The Liberal Party had then tried to get me to join them, and I told them to jump in the river. I was going to get in instead. I didn't, but I did do very well.
Yeah.
And considering I was completely inexperienced, and the only people who were running the party were me and Edward Woodward's son, who also lived in Twickenham.
Yes. Yeah.
So we were a two-man party. But the basic core principle of a radical reform of democracy and welfare state remains the thing that I think has to be addressed first. But in Brighton, in Hove, I literally only got the party together a month before the election, just because I couldn't vote for anybody else.
Yeah.
So there was no hope. I mean, I wasn't prepared or anything like that. This time, with 3050, I'm preparing for a year and a half ahead.
Yeah.
And that's why I was in Canary Wharf seeing the business manager, one of the business managers in Barclays Bank, who were giving me great support. And
so we've got the website here. I'll say it for the thing. It's the numerals 30-50.co.uk. So that's where people can
thank you
find
very much indeed. Yes, www.30-50.co.uk, and it's very unusual, I think, for a manifesto, political manifesto, because it's not full of statistics and graphs and promises, all of which can be twisted and broken.
Yeah.
The normal sort of patronising stuff that the main parties dish out. 3050 is cross-party, it's common sense, it's got some very original ideas,
Yes.
and it's got a lot of ideas that ordinary people, I hear it up and down, old, young, rich, poor, people are just, they're common sense ideas, and we're not getting it from our politicians.
I'm looking at the objectives which you've got on the back of the card you've given me, and one of the things here you put is zero crime tolerance and deterrent penalties. And just before we started, we were talking about Singapore,
Yes.
a society which it's got the rule of law, but they are very robust and very strict laws. And we were discussing whether there is as an inevitable consequence of that, there is a less freedom, if you like, in Singapore than we have here. But we were discussing whether Singapore is a better society for the people that live in it as a consequence. Is that the sort of thing that you're referring to here when you talk about zero crime tolerance?
Not at all the Singapore model.
No.
Because that definitely is authoritarian, and the great feature of British society has always been that it is a very open, free society, free speech, and it is a moderate and gentle society, and so definitely not authoritarianism. But we have been verging in Britain towards authoritarianism. I mean, under Tony Blair's quasi-presidential rule, a woman who went quietly to read out the 104 names of British service personnel killed in Iraq, by herself, totally solo, quietly, simply reading a list of names. A great van of 14 policemen came and arrested her.
And where was this?
outside the gates of 10 Downing Street.
Oh, really?
And another man was arrested under Blair for having a copy of George Orwell's 1984 stuck in his pocket walking across Parliament Square. And now the coalition are trying to bring in this gagging law, which is going to seriously limit what you and I can speak out our minds about in the run-up to any future general election. And I know it's definitely not my zero tolerance for crime and deterrent punishments seems to me common sense. And what goes with it is, if you don't want the punishment, don't commit the crime. It's very, very simple. But the punishments have got to be non-barbaric, and the law has got to be fair. For example, I'll give you just one example.
Yeah.
If a child, a pupil, goes into school with an offensive weapon, let's say a knife that can kill, in his pocket, the punishment should be, whatever we decide the punishment is, a very severe punishment, no second chance, you're out. It's very, very simple. To carry a knife in school has got to be offensive and dangerous. You could say it's defensive, but it isn't. If the rule applies to everybody, then that's the case. We're not going to have a safe society if we nimby-pimby and namby-pamby about and saying, oh well, this person's background was so tragic and they live in a dangerous place and everybody's got to be armed. No, we'll get like America. Yes. Everyone has a gun, most uncivilized, and someone loses their temper, bang, and this person dead.
One of the other things on your card I'm looking here, and a lot of people in politics probably think this, but are frightened to say it, decriminalisation of drugs and state control of drugs. I mean, what would you say to the point, though, that even if you have state control of drugs, once somebody is addicted to something particularly unpleasant like heroin, they become dependent on the drug, and they can't actually do anything. If your addiction's that bad, you can't hold down a job because your sole focus is going to be on the next fix. Is decriminalisation not just going to make that worse?
No, I don't think so, because I think that at the moment people get drugs which are of dangerous quality, in dangerous ways, from dangerous people, and those who are prone to addiction will still be prone to addiction if you decriminalise, and those who are not prone to it but get sucked into a criminal world are probably going to be pushed into addiction by all sorts of arm twisting and stuff. So I don't think so, but the point about decriminalisation is don't push it underground, have it above ground, make certain it is quality controlled. By all means, you can harness the drug barons in an honest way. You know, you don't have to necessarily fight them. Probably you find their people in top places anyway.
So, I mean, are you talking here about just decriminalising use of drugs and keeping controlled, or are you talking about across the board? So the people who are involved in the importation and the supply and the criminal finances that goes around it.
Oh yes, absolutely. I mean, it is become a state-controlled and provided industry. And obviously, if you're working some kind of black market or illegally, you'll be stamped on very heavily indeed. The point is this: you're not going to stamp out drugs. You're just not going to do it because a lot of people like it, and people think it's their free right to do it. What you can do is say, have a very, very tough advertising campaign, a fair one, but just saying, these are the facts, these are the dangers. If you want to ruin your life, it's a free country, you do it. But, and the but is this, if you are found with the traces of any drugs of this nature in your blood, You may not drive a bus or a car or an aeroplane or a ship. You may not be a nurse in a hospital or a teacher in a school while you have the drug in your blood. And a number of other things as well. Also, if you commit a crime and you have traces of drug in your blood, the sentence is doubled. And so, it's yours. You make the choice. If you don't want to drive a bus and you want to be stoned all day long, go ahead. You do it. But if you commit a crime in this state, you get double the punishment. It's so simple. The choice is yours. The reason why it is antisocial is you get punishment for behaving badly under the influence of drugs is because you're a danger to other people.
Yes, yes, indeed.
And this is the reason for it.
Tell us about this other objective here: civic awareness and national defence training. That
I
sounds
believe
a bit sinister.
No,
I'm sure
not at all sinister. Quite the reverse. I think killing is wrong. Period. It's wrong. Unfortunately, there will always be war. There will always be killing in some description. We could talk about the just war at length. I won't. But interventionist war, as far as I'm concerned, places like Iraq, Libya, Syria, are, in my book, out completely. We don't interfere in other countries.
Right.
If they try to invade us, as Germany did in 1940, and we believe in a free society, a democratic society, a society in which minorities are allowed to live and breathe equally, and fascist Nazi Germany tried to crush all that, then you're fighting for your basic standards and interests. And I consider that is absolutely legitimate, and you're wrong not to fight for it and stand up for it. This is where the civil defence training comes in. I'd say all 18 to 25-year-olds at some point must train. And highly, only for 9 months. And at the end of the 9 months, there is also an obligation to do VSO or go to a foreign country and learn a structured visit, learning the language and the customs of another foreign country of your choice, which helps to readjust people to civilian life and also increases our knowledge and appreciation of.
Could you practically do that for every person aged between 18 and 25?
Yeah, with national service.
No, I mean talking about sending people overseas for VSO, that kind of thing. I mean the cost would be huge, would it not?
I mean that's a perfectly good point. I think there should be probably another option. Yes, I think there should be a home option.
Yeah.
But not necessarily. I don't see why. Because national service was 2 years.
Yes.
And I spent 6 months of that in Germany. Others spent their time in Kenya.
But one of the criticisms of national service was that it took all different sorts of people and basically tried to make them all fit one model. Is your plan for something similar,
No,
or
absolutely
is it going
not.
to be?
And I don't believe that is the case of national service either. What it did teach people was discipline, a sense of loyalty, immediacy, teamwork, and it gave them very good skills. It certainly wasn't trying to brainwash.
No, I'm not
some
suggesting
kind
that.
of,
but did it particularly recognise that people have different skills,
Oh yes,
different qualities, and so on?
definitely. And some people didn't fit in, and some people, because they didn't fit in, or they were unlucky with the people they met, or whatever. Very, very small number. I did it. I didn't want to do it at all. I was terrified of going in. I absolutely loved it, and I credit my time in the national service as a time which actually set me on the right footing, because to be honest, although I had a good deal more discipline in my background than most people have, I didn't know what discipline was.
Yeah.
And if you want to achieve, if the nation wants to achieve, a population has got to be disciplined. Not external discipline, you've got to be self-disciplined. You've got to make yourself get up at 6 o'clock in the morning and work. And this is what we find now. A lot of criticism of Poles and Eastern Europeans coming to this country, and they're not all saints, but they bloody well work. They've got a work ethic. How is it? Example at the moment of 3 German students who I met on a pilgrimage in France 3 years ago. They've just finished their sort of university level. They came over here and they asked if I could help them, which I did. I tried to. Just showed them around and pointed them how they might get accommodation, how they might get a job. And within a week, they have got their own accommodation and they're working, full-time work. What's the matter with English people doing the same thing?
Oh wow, yeah.
We've got a ridiculous benefit system which makes it, and they're perfectly sensible to do it. It makes it easier not to work.
So you've mentioned here at the end extra votes in Parliament for independence. So there's a bit of electoral reform in there as well.
Yeah, a lot of electoral.
PR.
I think it's. I think it's up for debate. I really do.
Because we had the opportunity here for some.
Yes, I know.
Reform,
I don't personally.
vote.
I don't think that PR is. It's can be very complicated. There may be some areas where you can have PR. It's very complicated, and really, at the end of the day, you end up with nothing that pleases anybody, or you can do.
We had the opportunity for the alternative vote
yes.
a few years ago, and we didn't go for that. Was that a disappointment to you?
No, honestly,
You
but
weren't
the
very
whole
keen.
thing is in such a mess anyway.
Yeah.
We're just going to get more of the same, I think. Where it could be advantageous, of course, is for someone like myself who's standing as an independent.
Well, absolutely. That's what I was thinking. Well,
yes.
PR would be very advantageous.
Oh,
for
very
somebody.
advantageous for me. Yes, it would. But it's not necessarily a good thing, I don't think. I mean, I'm standing. When I stand, I shall stand to win. Do I honestly think I have a chance? Of course I've got a chance, otherwise I wouldn't stand. Is it likely? It's against the odds. But the point of standing in that case, why, is hopefully the ideas that I express might be picked up by somebody who does get in. And it may help to change the some ideas in the electorate, even if they don't vote for me. Unfortunately, we live in such a biased society that the media probably won't pick up on me.
Do you mean the newspapers, or are you talking about TV?
And television and the newspapers, they're only interested in scandal and the 3 main parties. They're not interested in democracy, frankly. They're interested in selling papers or getting viewership up.
That's an interesting question. Let me ask you this, and I wasn't going to ask you about this, but I will now you've raised that. So speaking as a writer as well, somebody who's involved in politics, we've recently had the Royal Charter on Press Regulation. What are your views on that whole issue then? And I mean, the way that the media has behaved as well, but also now the government's attempts to bring in some kind of statutory control. Because we talked about liberty and freedom of speech.
Well, I think we're in a very difficult position because if you have a country, I'm not suggesting, I mean, I'm a Catholic, but I'm not expecting everybody else to be, or to be a believer in Buddha or anything else, or nothing. In fact, as we know, it's a minority of people who actually go to church in Britain, in the Christian church, though it's a Christian country. And not every, I mean, even in the Islamic world, there may be more people pay lip service. Whether they actually believe is a good question. But, you don't have to belong to some religion, which can be quite dangerous, to be a decent person. There are people of no faith who are very good people, and frankly, we all share, I would say, there is a common ethic that decent people share, which is why in my manifesto I have something called a National Ethical Council, which is composed of the leaders of the established churches in Britain and humanists and atheists.
Yes.
of whom will probably represent, well, a very large minority anyway. And their job is to point the finger when someone or some firm or some party transgresses what is a commonly accepted decent line of behaviour. For example, gas prices go up 9.5%, and on the same day the owner of boss of one of the gas companies walks off with a multi-million-pound bonus. First of all, it's very bad leadership. If you're telling the men to go over the top, you go over the top with them.
Yes.
And he's completely unrepentant. That revolting American who ran Barclays Bank a few years ago, Bob Diamond, went off with £18 million over 6 years, when people like him are partly responsible for the world financial collapse. Now, this is where it's no use the Archbishop of Canterbury getting up, which our new Archbishop is, because most people aren't Christian followers anyway. But it's a National Ethical Council of people on it who represent people who don't have any religious belief and say, that man is a disgrace. Now, legally, they may not be able to do anything about it, but the example, making someone like that an example, sets a standard which does activate people's conscience. Now, why the hell Cameron and Clegg, neither of whom, to my mind, are worth tuppence?
I didn't think you'd be a Nick Clegg fan.
No, right? Nick Clegg, I think he's... we won't talk about him. I mean, his ideas about House of Lords reform were cockeyed. I mean, he just wanted to have 100% democratically, elected democratically. But he was electing from the same pool, i.e. the general electorate, as the MPs are elected from. So what are you going to get? A replica of the House of Commons and a load of rubbish careerists. But leave that one aside. No, I mean, I think this is where it's a very deep question what you ask, because people are not either taught ethics or go to faith schools or schools which are based on an ethical standard. So people are not, and parents and the politically correct in our community, which is getting larger and larger, don't correct young people, their own children, and say that is wrong, that is right. It's all, oh well darling, if you feel like scribbling on the wall, you scribble on the wall. It doesn't matter if you kick your mother, she'll give you an argument why you shouldn't. No, I mean, this is not teaching right and wrong. I'm not in favour of authoritarianism, I'm not in favour of brutality, and but I am in favour of discipline, which has got to be taught at an early age, and people have to be brought up with an ethical sense. I mean, the murders that are committed are simply horrendous. I mean, against 90-year-old women living alone. I mean, I won't even repeat them. I mean, we read it every day. People have got one human being has had to do that on another human being.
Yes.
I'm sorry, they're not all sick or impoverished or something. They're just without any moral standard.
And finally, because we're coming to the end
sorry.
of our... No, it's all right. We're coming to the end of our time, and I know you've got other things to do. And it's a bit of a jump from where we were, but we're currently... it's the beginning of November.
Don't worry if you overrun a bit.
No, that's right. Well, it's the beginning of November, and we've got the 50th anniversary of Doctor Who coming up. So you were saying earlier that's been very busy for you. So what have you got coming up in that respect? I mean, you're going to be at the Excel, I presume.
Well, yes, there's a very big BBC.
I'm told the fees are phenomenal.
I really wouldn't know about that.
Oh, actually, that's not what I've heard at all. But no, sorry, carry on. Yeah.
Well, there is a fee, of course.
Let's not talk about the fee.
And I mean, you know, I don't consider £50,000 for one day as being excessive myself.
No, not at all.
I mean, to hell with the rest of society. Why shouldn't they starve? No.
Yeah.
I mean, if I were a banker...
They'll only spend it on gas.
Exactly. No, it's a big party. It's a very big event, and the BBC are saying thank you to the technicians and the artists and the fans for what has made the BBC and the country a great deal of money, and they're saying thank you for it. Yes, so I've got the big do at the Excel, which I'm delighted to go to. It'll be very exciting, I think. I'm also doing a live interview. There's a big party at BFI.
Oh right, yes.
And we're going to see, all of us are going to be chained to a chair and see the special 50th edition, and we're then going to be given a sandwich or something.
I take it you're not in it.
Unfortunately, I'm not in it. No,
because you're in the 20th. You see, so really, man, you should have been in the 50th.
I wish, but there we go. Anyway, maybe in the future. But I'd love to go back onto the show actually. But anyway, and then we are all interviewed, probably a bit giggly, I would imagine. I think it's 9 o'clock on BBC Three or something like that.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I think. But so that's going to be a great weekend.
We've got Australia coming up.
I then start rehearsing for The Woman in Black on the 18th of November. Go to Australia for 3 weeks on the 1st of December. Going to Melbourne, Sydney, Adelaide and Brisbane.
This is for Doctor Who again.
With Doctor Who, the Doctor Who circuit, which is going to be tremendous. I've never been to Australia. Yeah, it's going to be a busy end of the year, and then I'm going to LA to Gallifrey in February, mid-February next year. And there are even some things in 2014. People have got dues of various kinds.
Excellent.
Yeah, but
I think all the DVDs have been done now, haven't they?
Unfortunately, yes.
More commentaries and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yes, unfortunately they have. Yeah. They've been very successful, very popular, I think.
Yeah, and I think The Mind of Evil's been a particularly popular one.
Yes, it's beautifully coloured.
You were at the BFI for that one,
I was there.
I was there too. I remember I was quite impressed with the work that was
I was
done.
very impressed. I thought, if one's being super hypercritical, I believe that it would have been a better 4-parter than a 6-parter.
Yes.
Because I think the story rather ran out of steam. But it's a very good story, and it's popular. It looks really nice.
Yeah. It's when you see it on... it's nice to watch it in that environment on the big screen, isn't it?
Lovely, yes.
That's why we loved when we had Day of the Daleks at Riverside. I thought that was a wonderful atmosphere.
Yes, it's terrific.
It's good fun, yeah.
Yes, that little miserable thing in the corner of the room, doesn't it?
No, indeed. Yeah. Okay, well, Richard, we've taken more time than we said, so I'll leave it at that, but thank you very much again, and we'll speak to you again soon, I hope. And very best of luck with 3050 as well. Are you going to be looking at local elections as well?
I doubt if I'll have time.
For you?
I think, and I want to get the package really strong and ready.
Yeah.
We're going, we're online now, and I've still got 2 films that I'm making which are going on, and are not quite ready yet. And if they go viral,
who knows?
Look in the regular parties, yeah.
Okay, well, that's
Paul,
it.
thank you very much indeed. It's always a pleasure to talk to you.
A pleasure. Thank you very much.
Not at all.